Spring arrived in Boston with gentle sunshine. At Amy Davis's house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, tulips and sweet peas swayed in the breeze. The sweet aroma of a cake being finished in the kitchen filled the entire home. "Mom, when can we eat that cake?" Ryan asked, leaning forward from the living room where he'd been watching TV. Amy smiled and replied, "Very soon. Once the icing dries. This is for Mrs. Johnson's birthday. But I made cupcakes with the leftover batter, and you can have one of those now." Ryan's face lit up. At almost 12 years old, he often struggled at school, but at home he was a bright and obedient child. Despite his learning disability, his intuition for machines was remarkably sharp. Amy placed a cupcake in her son's hand and stroked his head. In her heart, she hoped for the day when his talents would be properly recognized. The ringing telephone broke the peaceful afternoon air. When Amy answered, she heard her sister Olivia's excited voice. "Amy. I have amazing news." "What is it? You sound so excited." "James, he proposed to me." Amy was so surprised she lost her words. Her sister Olivia was a career woman working for a major corporation, and while Amy occasionally heard about her romantic life, this was the first mention of marriage. "Congratulations. When? Where? Tell me everything." Olivia began speaking excitedly. Her fiancé, James Morrison, was the heir to Morrison Automotive, a luxury car dealership chain. He had proposed during dinner at an elegant restaurant. "That's wonderful." Amy sincerely congratulated her. "His father must be delighted." "Yes, he is." And, Olivia's voice took on a slightly tense tone, "Next week, both families are meeting. It's like a formal engagement party." "I see. I'll need to start preparing. I'll coordinate with Mike's day off." "Amy," Olivia interrupted. "Actually, I don't want you to come." Silence hung on the other end of the line. Amy couldn't believe her ears. "What? What do you mean?" "I'm sorry," Olivia's voice grew small. "Your husband is a mechanic, right? He doesn't really fit in with our circles. James's father is very particular about propriety and..." Pain shot through Amy's chest. She was proud of her husband Mike. He ran a small auto repair shop in town, and his skills were well regarded locally. His honesty and diligence were what Amy valued most. "Olivia, how can you say such things? You know how sincere and wonderful Mike is." "I know, but this is the business world. Family connections matter." After hanging up, Amy slumped down at the kitchen table. She couldn't suppress her hurt feelings. She was a former nurse who now ran a small cake business from home. It might be a modest life, but their family was happy. Why would her sister speak that way? The next day, Amy's mother Helen came to visit unexpectedly. Since losing her husband, she had remained active in social circles and valued appearances above all else. "I heard from Olivia," she said, taking a sip of tea in the living room. "A connection with the Morrison family. What a situation this has become." "Situation? Isn't it wonderful news?" "Of course it is. But that family comes from old money. So make sure your stupid son doesn't come, as they'll notice right away." Amy felt a surge of anger. However, she could only remain silent. She knew her mother didn't mean harm, she was just overly concerned with social appearances. Still, she couldn't tolerate hearing her son called stupid. Ryan just has a learning disability. He has special talents. You can say that all you want, but I doubt the Morrisons would understand. They're a family with 3 generations of history, and Robert Morrison is strict about tradition and family honor. Amy looked out the window. In the garden, Mike and Ryan were repairing an old bicycle. Both of them were working diligently, sweat on their foreheads. Her family, her pride. Amy took a deep breath and turned back to her mother. "All right. I'll make sure we don't attend." Helen showed a relieved expression and stood up. "A wise decision. It's for Olivia's sake. She needs this opportunity." After her mother left, Amy continued watching her husband and son in the garden. Her heart was filled with conflicting emotions, wanting her sister's happiness while also wanting to protect her own family. That evening, Amy sighed repeatedly while preparing dinner. The aroma of pot roast filled the kitchen, and though this was usually a time that calmed her heart, her thoughts were filled with her sister's and mother's words. When Mike returned from work, he immediately noticed something was wrong with his wife. "What's the matter?" Mike gently asked while washing his hands. They still had stains of machine oil on them. At first, Amy was going to say it was nothing, but she couldn't lie. She revealed the news of Olivia's engagement and how they were asked not to attend the family meeting. "Because we don't fit in?" Mike frowned but quickly regained his smile. "Don't worry about it, Amy. We have our own happiness." He shrugged and took a beer from the refrigerator. "To be honest, I'm more comfortable dealing with the folks in this town than being nervous around the air of a luxury car dealership." Mike's positive attitude always lightened Amy's heart. His shop, Davis Auto Repair, though small, had earned a solid reputation locally. He was particularly known for diagnosing complex car problems that even the big dealerships couldn't handle. "But Mom said about Ryan that." Amy hesitated. Mike's expression hardened. "What did she say?" "That he's stupid, so don't bring him," Amy said in a small voice. "Because of his learning disability." Mike exhaled deeply. "Ryan is a special child. His mind just works differently, he's not stupid. Just yesterday, he spotted a transmission problem in that 10-year-old Camaro. Even I didn't notice it." At that moment, Ryan came into the kitchen with his homework. "Dad, I don't understand this problem." Mike sat beside his son and patiently began explaining the math problem. Amy watched them, fighting back tears. This scene was her treasure. The next day, Amy wanted to make sure Olivia was truly happy. After closing her cake shop, she decided to visit her sister's apartment. Olivia showed a surprised face when she opened the door but invited her sister in. The interior of the luxury apartment was modern and sophisticated, but somehow seemed to lack human warmth. "What do you want?" Olivia's voice was slightly defensive. "I just came to see you," Amy smiled. "What kind of person is James's father?" Olivia answered with a somewhat tense expression. "Robert Morrison is a strict man. His company has been family operated for 3 generations, and for him, tradition and honor are paramount." "And are you happy?" Amy looked straight into her sister's eyes. "Of course." Olivia answered a bit too emphatically. "James is wonderful, and we're a good match." However, Amy thought she saw a shadow of anxiety in her sister's eyes. As the conversation progressed, Olivia gradually relaxed, showing her engagement ring and talking about wedding plans. On the surface, she seemed happy, but Amy sensed she was hiding something. As Amy was leaving, Olivia suddenly took her hand. "Sis, I'm sorry for saying those things." "Don't worry about it," Amy said gently. "I just want you to be happy." Olivia nodded, but her expression was complex. "The Morrison family has strict rules. I wonder if I can manage well." Those words increased Amy's concern for her sister. 3 days later, Helen visited Amy's house again. This time she was carrying an extra-large newspaper. "Look. There's a feature article on the Morrison family." The newspaper had an article with the headline, "Heir to the Morrison Automotive Empire Announces Engagement." The photo of Robert Morrison showed a man with a stern expression. "This man values propriety above all else," Helen explained enthusiastically. "He's protected the family business for 3 generations. If you ever happen to meet him, hide Mike's occupation." Amy stood up. "I would never do such a thing. Mike's work is respectable. I would never hide it." "But Olivia's future is at stake." Helen raised her voice. "Mike and Ryan are my family. I will never be ashamed of them." That night, Amy confessed everything to her husband. Mike listened quietly but finally said calmly, "I respect your choice. If not attending the meeting is your answer, that's fine. But let me say one thing." He took Amy's hand. I love this job. I take pride in being able to help people. And Ryan is a child with extraordinary talent. We don't need to force him to be normal. Amy looked back into her husband's direct gaze. Her resolve strengthened. To protect Mike and Ryan, she decided not to attend the meeting. Lying in bed, Amy thought about the strict world of the Morrison family and how her sister would live within it. Was Olivia truly satisfied with her choice? And what kind of man was Robert Morrison? Amy fell asleep with anxiety and conflict in her heart. The day of the family meeting arrived. Amy tried to immerse herself in her normal routine to distract from the pain in her chest. Mike returned early from the shop today, and Ryan had also come home from school. She decided to prepare a special dinner for her family. At least tonight, she wanted to savor their happiness. Spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread, Ryan's favorite. Amy was busy working in the kitchen. And chocolate mousse for dessert. Wow, that's the best! Ryan exclaimed with joy. He began helping to set the table. The preparations for a simple but heartwarming dinner were complete. Mike had just taken a shower to wash away the smell of machine oil. Smells wonderful. Nothing can beat your cooking. The three of them sat at the table with smiles, enjoying their meal while exchanging pleasant conversation. Amy occasionally looked at her family's expressions, as if trying to engrave this moment in her heart. This small happiness was what mattered most to her. Mom, more spaghetti, please. As Ryan held out his plate, the phone rang. Amy hesitated slightly but got up to answer it. Hello, Davis residence. At first, there was no response. Only faint breathing could be heard. Amy. A trembling voice came through. It was her sister Olivia. Please, help me, please. Olivia's voice was so choked with tears that her words were barely intelligible. Olivia? What's wrong? What happened? Amy's chest tightened with worry. At the Morrison house, terrible situation, come, please. Calm down. What happened? Are you hurt? The car, tradition. Robert is furious. Olivia's voice became even more distressed, making it difficult to understand what she was saying. Give me the address. I'll come right away. The phone suddenly disconnected before Olivia could fully communicate the mansion's address. With her chest nearly bursting with anxiety, Amy returned to the dining room. Mike, something terrible has happened. I got a call from Olivia asking for help. She was crying. Mike stood up. What happened? I'm not sure, but there seems to be some problem at the Morrison house. She was really distraught. Ryan asked worriedly, is Aunt Olivia in danger? I don't know. But she definitely needs help, Amy decided. I have to go. Mike nodded. Let's go together. I might be able to help. But that family won't welcome us. Still, your sister is in trouble, right? Mike said quietly. Let's go. The three of them quickly got into the car and headed toward the address of the upscale residential area Olivia had mentioned. The scenery outside the car window gradually changed, from modest homes to elegant mansions with expansive grounds. What amazing houses, Ryan said, eyes wide as he looked out the window. Amy's hands were trembling with tension. When they arrived at the Morrison family gate, a uniformed man was standing there. May I help you? He asked with a stern expression. I'm here to see Olivia Davis. I'm her sister. Your name? Amy Davis. This is my husband Mike and our son Ryan. The gatekeeper looked at the three of them suspiciously. I'm sorry, but your names are not on the list. I cannot let you in. Amy felt a surge of urgency. But my sister called me. She was asking for help. She was crying. While the gatekeeper was hesitating, an intercom rang. After a brief conversation, he reluctantly opened the gate. Please proceed to the mansion. The three walked along the long stone-paved path and finally arrived at a massive colonial-style mansion. When the door opened, Amy was surprised to see her mother Helen standing there. Why did you come? Helen whispered hurriedly. Go back. Olivia called me. She was asking for help. You shouldn't have come. Helen looked at the three of them with a confused expression. Especially bringing Mike and Ryan. Mother, Amy said firmly. We are family. We came to help Olivia. Mike politely bowed his head. Excuse the intrusion, Mrs. Davis. Helen heaved a deep sigh and invited the three inside. It's too late now. But please, don't say anything unnecessary. The interior of the mansion was luxurious, with crystal chandeliers hanging from high ceilings and deep red carpets on marble floors. Amy and her family were led to a spacious reception room. A tense atmosphere filled the room. Olivia sat with red, swollen eyes next to her fiancé James. James wore a bewildered expression, and the man who appeared to be his father had a face red with anger. Several people who seemed to be relatives were also seated. Sis. Olivia stood up and rushed over to Amy. You came. Robert Morrison frowned. So this is the rumored older sister. His voice had a clearly contemptuous tone. Amy maintained a dignified attitude despite her nervousness. Hello, Mr. Morrison. I came because my sister seems to be in trouble. Could you please tell me what happened? Olivia spoke up. Sis, something terrible has happened. The Morrison family has a 1937 Rolls-Royce that's been passed down for generations, and for 150 years, there's been a tradition of the bride and groom riding to church in this car. Robert interrupted. That's right. In the Morrison family, riding to church in this car is proof of marriage. Olivia continued, but the car suddenly stopped working. We called a repair shop, but they said they couldn't fix it. Then Robert said. I told them, Robert raised his voice, in the Morrison family, we go to church in this car. Without this tradition, no marriage can be recognized. Today's engagement ceremony is cancelled. Amy was surprised. Her sister's call for help was because of a car breakdown. However, looking at Olivia's expression, she understood how serious this problem was for her. Robert Morrison was saying that if they couldn't maintain this tradition, he wouldn't recognize the marriage itself. Father, please, James spoke up. Perhaps another car. No. Robert slammed his fist on the table. The honor and tradition of the Morrison family are non-negotiable. This car is not just a vehicle, it's the soul of our family. I cannot recognize a marriage without it. The room fell silent. Amy looked at Mike. From his calm expression, she could tell he was thinking about something. Mike quietly stepped forward. Excuse me, but would it be possible for me to see the car? Robert wore a puzzled expression. And you are? Mike Davis. I'm a mechanic. Robert's expression hardened. A mechanic? So you're Olivia's sisters? He said in a clearly disdainful tone. Yes. I run a small repair shop, Mike answered confidently. If you don't mind, could I please see the car? Robert snorted. Even professional repair services couldn't handle it. What could a town mechanic possibly do? Father, please, James pleaded desperately. We have no other options. After a long silence, Robert finally nodded reluctantly. Fine. It's futile anyway. The group was led by Robert to a large garage on the estate. Amy placed her hand on Mike's shoulder and quietly asked, Are you sure about this? Mike smiled. Don't worry. I won't know until I see it. Ryan also followed excitedly. Dad, I'll help too. Robert opened the garage door and entered. Inside sat a glossy black 1937 Rolls-Royce Phantom. Its presence was majestic, radiating a timeless beauty. This is the Morrison family treasure, Robert said proudly. But now? His expression clouded. It won't start. Mike approached the car and gazed at it with respect. It's a magnificent vehicle, he said quietly. Thank you for showing it to me. Amy watched her husband's profile and proudly said, Let them handle it. My husband is an excellent mechanic, and my son has a talent for machines. She gave Olivia a small wink. Mike and Ryan immediately began carefully examining the car. Robert Morrison watched their movements with a dubious expression. Amy stood at a distance, clasping her hands in front of her chest. Olivia was tightly gripping James's hand, her expression mixing hope and anxiety. Mike opened the hood and thoroughly examined the engine. Ryan also stood beside his father, peering into the car. "How is it?" James asked, unable to contain himself. Mike shook his head. "Not sure yet. This car is a masterpiece. Hard to believe it's over 80 years old." Suddenly, Ryan exclaimed, "Dad, it's here." He had crawled under the car and was pointing at something. Mike was surprised by his son's voice and bent down to look in the direction Ryan was pointing. "I see," he nodded. "Good catch, Ryan. What's the problem?" Robert leaned forward to ask. Mike stood up, put his hands in his pockets, and answered, "There are multiple issues. First, there's old gas remaining in the fuel system. Then, the wiring in the ignition system has deteriorated. Also, the float valve in the carburetor is stuck." "What did your son find?" Robert asked, half doubtful. "He discovered a hidden crack in the fuel line. Fuel is leaking from there, preventing sufficient fuel from reaching the engine." Mike placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "He has a special eye for these things." Robert frowned, but hope was beginning to blossom. "Can you fix it?" "Let's try," Mike smiled. "Ryan, could you get the tools, please?" Ryan nodded energetically and ran to the car. As Amy watched her son go, she quietly asked Mike, "Do you really have confidence in this? This car is a masterpiece." "And Ryan found a crucial problem," Mike answered quietly. "It's worth trying." When Ryan returned with the toolbox, Mike and Ryan began working. Amy watched the two of them, praying in her heart. Olivia stood beside her. "Sis," Olivia said in a low voice. "I'm sorry for saying those terrible things." Amy held her sister's hand. "Don't worry about it. Family helps each other in times of trouble." Time passed, and Mike and Ryan continued working silently. Robert, initially skeptical, gradually began showing interest in their work. Mike's hands displayed skilled craftsmanship, and his knowledge of the car's structure and history was profound. Ryan also handled parts with surprising accuracy while following his father's instructions. "That boy. I heard he has a learning disability," Robert whispered to Amy. "Yes," Amy answered proudly. "He struggles with schoolwork, but he has a special talent for machines." Finally, Mike stood up and wiped his hands. "Shall we try it?" As everyone held their breath and watched, Mike sat in the driver's seat and turned the key. At first, the engine made a coughing sound, but soon the more than 80-year-old engine started smoothly. A deep roar resonated throughout the garage. "It works!" Robert couldn't help but exclaim. Joy and surprise spread across his face. "It's really working." Mike smiled as he listened to the engine's condition. "This beauty can still run." Olivia burst into tears of joy, and James bowed deeply to Mike. "Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude." Mike stopped the engine and got out of the car. "No thanks necessary. Helping family is just what we do." Robert approached Mike and stared intently at his face. "So many specialists gave up, yet you fixed it? And in such a short time." "My son found the critical issue," Mike answered humbly. "Without him, I wouldn't have noticed it either." Robert looked at Ryan. The boy was smiling shyly. "That's an amazing talent," Robert gently patted Ryan's head. "You're special." Ryan laughed awkwardly. "I just like machines. It's like they talk to me." Robert then once again stared intently at Mike's face. "I feel like I've met you somewhere before." He frowned. "Your face seems familiar." Mike showed a slightly confused expression. "Really?" Robert suddenly had a surprised look. "That's it. 10 years ago, I was in a near-fatal car accident. A passing man saved my life with quick first aid and his knowledge of cars." His voice trembled. "I can't forget his face. Could it be you? The room fell silent. Amy looked at Mike in surprise. She remembered hearing about an incident 10 years ago when Mike encountered an accident scene on his way home from work and rescued a severely injured man. After thinking for a moment, Mike quietly answered, "Yes, I left without giving my name back then. I waited until the ambulance arrived and then left. I'm glad I could help." What a coincidence, tears welled up in Robert's eyes. "You were the man who saved my life." James placed a hand on his father's shoulder with a surprised expression. "Dad, that accident? The benefactor you always talked about." "Yes," Robert grabbed Mike's shoulders. "Without you, I wouldn't be here today. Back then, you noticed fuel leaking from somewhere in the car and rescued me before it exploded. Then you administered first aid as I lay by the roadside." Mike modestly nodded. "I learned first aid from my wife, a former nurse." He looked at Amy. Robert suddenly asked, as if something had occurred to him, "Wait, Davis." "Mike Davis?" His eyes widened. "The designer of the Morrison Special Edition? Why are you a mechanic in a small town?" Amy gasped in surprise. She knew her husband had been an engineer working for a luxury car manufacturer, but she hadn't fully understood its significance. Mike hesitated a little before answering, "I chose to directly help local people and spend time with my son rather than success in a big corporation." He looked at Ryan. "When he was diagnosed with a learning disability, we felt we needed to give him more time and attention. And I personally found that working with my hands, fixing cars, suited me better than the political world of big corporations." Robert was silent for a long time. Tears welled in his eyes, and his stern expression softened. "The man who saved my life and a respected engineer," he bowed deeply to Mike. "The person who taught me that humanity and talent matter more than status and titles was you all along." Olivia hugged her sister. "I'm sorry, sis. I didn't know anything." Amy hugged her sister back. "Of course you didn't know. Mike doesn't talk much about his past. He just lives in the present." Helen stood with a dumbfounded expression, seeing a new side of her son-in-law. The town mechanic she had looked down on for years was actually a lifesaver and a first-class engineer. Robert placed his hand on Mike's shoulder. "Please join us for dinner tonight," he said with a sincere expression. "And tell us more about your family." 6 weeks later, a crowd gathered in front of St. John's Church. Under a clear sky, the 1937 Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop in front of the church. Olivia, who stepped out of the car, was wrapped in a pure white wedding dress with a radiant smile. "You look beautiful," Amy greeted her sister at the church entrance. Dressed in an elegant mauve dress, she stood proudly as the maid of honor. The wedding was magnificent, with Amy's family welcomed as honored guests. Robert Morrison watched with satisfaction as James and Olivia exchanged their vows. Tradition was preserved. But new values were also found, he quietly said to Mike. During the reception, Robert called Mike aside and spoke to him with a serious expression. "Mike, would you consider serving as a technical advisor to my company? Your knowledge and experience are invaluable." Mike smiled but politely shook his head. "Thank you. But I like my current job helping local people." Robert looked disappointed but nodded. "I understand. But would you at least consider helping with an education program for young mechanics? Passing on skills to the next generation is important." "I'd be happy to," Mike extended his hand. Robert gripped it firmly in return. Meanwhile, with Robert's support, Ryan was able to participate in an education program specializing in mechanics, giving him an opportunity to develop his talent. His learning disability remained unchanged, but in the world of machines, he continued to show unparalleled talent. "That boy is special," Robert told Amy. "His talent might change the world someday." Olivia and James began a happy married life, and a deep bond grew between them. "I learned from you and Mike," Olivia told Amy. "True happiness isn't in titles or appearances, but in the heart." Helen showed the most surprising change. She let go of her attachment to social status and began helping at Amy's cake shop. "I want to value real happiness over superficial respectability," she explained her change of heart. Robert, who had adopted a humanity-first value system after the accidit, also changed the management policy of Morrison Automotive. Not only selling luxury cars, he focused more on contributing to the local community and established a mechanic training school at Mike's suggestion. "Mike, meeting you and your family taught me the most important lessons in life," Robert said at the end of the wedding. "What true wealth is, what true family is, and what true value is." On Christmas night, both families gathered at Amy's house. In the simple yet warm home, children ran around, and adults laughed. The Rolls-Royce that Mike and Ryan had repaired was parked in front of the house with special permission. As Amy watched her family's smiling faces from the kitchen, she thought to herself, sometimes life takes unexpected turns. But if you don't lose sight of true values, unimaginable joy might be waiting ahead. As she savored her small happiness, she carried hot cocoa to serve. The Morrison and Davis families, while seemingly living in different worlds, were now bound by new ties, learning from each other about true values and the meaning of family.